All right, let's come to the big story that we've been consistently tracking right here on ET Now and on the India Development Debate. Did you know that the highest retail prices of petrol and diesel are being seen in the country right now since October 2018? And moreover, in October 2018, when you had prices this high, the crude basket was about $80 a barrel. It's now hovering around $50 a barrel. It's gone up. But remember, all of these last few months, because of the global pandemic, because of a drop in demand, crude prices had also dropped down. We did not really get much of that benefit. Now, why are we paying such high prices? A large reason of that, as most of you know, is because of taxes. In fact, 60 to 63% of what you pay per litre of petrol or diesel is by taxes, and 40% of that is taxed by the central government in form of excise duty. About 20 to 25% is taxed by state governments in the form of VAT and other such taxes. Clearly, neither side wants to reduce their own taxes because revenues have been low this year. So it's important to understand how dependent states are on this as a revenue, on fuel as a revenue, especially after most of their tax collection powers have been subsumed by the GST. We're going to be talking to Thomas Isaac, the Finance Minister of the state of Kerala, on this exclusively in just a few minutes from now. But first, let me go across to my colleague Poonam, who's breaking it down for you and explaining the dependence of revenue of various states on fuel taxes.
Well, sales tax and VAT, which is mainly petroleum, are the major sources of revenue for state governments. In fact, on account of the lockdown, we did see the consumption of petrol and diesel getting impacted. State revenues were also impacted on account of lower liquor revenues, as well as lower revenues coming in from real estate transactions. And as such, the states have had to resort to more borrowings. In fact, if you look at the overall composition of the own tax revenue for various states, broadly, state GST forms close to around 40% odd, sales tax VAT contributes to around 20% odd, state excise, mainly liquor, contributes 12% odd, and tax on property capital transactions form nearly around 11% of the overall state on tax revenue. In fact, if you look at these states like Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, as well as Telangana, nearly around 30 to 38% of the contribution comes from sales tax and VAT as percentage of the state owned tax revenue. And for states like Rajasthan, Gujarat and Odisha, 25 to 27% of the state owned tax revenue comes from the sales tax or VAT. So yes, this source of revenue is fairly important for the state governments, and as such, hence they have also gone ahead and resorted to higher taxes. If you look at the fuel price rise recently, a part of it of course is on account of the rise in crude oil prices, but also taxes form a huge bulk of fuel cost for the consumers. High level of excise duty and VAT contribute nearly around 63% of petrol cost and nearly around 60% of diesel cost. Centre had already hiked excise duty on petrol and diesel, and many states have hiked VAT rates to make up for the revenue collection, and hence lower revenues are also leading to more borrowings from the states.
Whenever there is a conversation about high taxes and honestly exorbitant taxes on fuel prices, petrol and diesel, the question always is, who is charging these taxes? Well, it is the centre and it is various state governments, both of whom are highly dependent, especially now, on the revenues that are collected from these taxes. Question number 2 is, who should be cutting these taxes more or first? And here is where it gets interesting. Both sides, the central government believes it's the state governments who can cut the taxes to some extent, and vice versa. In fact, Kerala Finance Minister Mr. Thomas Isaac recently tweeted saying that over the last 18 days, petrol prices have risen by 4% and diesel prices by 5% because of central government's tax policy. Reduce the central customs excise duty and bring down inflation and provide relief to people, he says. Prevent the economy from slipping into stagflation. I'm speaking now with Thomas Isaac to get a better sense of why he expects the central government to cut taxes And Mr. Isaac, welcome to the show. Great to speak to you once again. But I'll start with a straight question. Why can't you reduce taxes? You know it's hurting the common man.
Now, look, I haven't raised any tax. In fact, if I have done anything at all in the last 5 years, is I've reduced the state sale tax on petrol and diesel. Now, it is a central government which has raised its taxes. In fact, you may be surprised that tax on petrol has been increased by 3.5 times, and on diesel by 9 times under the NDA government. Now, this kind of astronomical increase in the tax rate, I don't think there is any precedent in the history, financial history. So, and besides, central government also has increased the customs duty on crude oil. And therefore, it is the central government who has taken the initiative, taken the steps to increase the taxes. And they are telling, we have increased the taxes. Now, to keep the prices down, you reduce your tax. States are in no way in a situation as to give up the revenue now. Revenues have fallen so sharply that every state government is facing a financial crisis. And therefore, I would say, central government should reduce the taxes. They have so much choice. They had the choice of increasing the corporate tax or some other taxes. Well, they chose to give up the tax on corporations. In fact, corporate tax was something like 1.5 lakh crores of rupees was given up. Instead, they decided to increase the tax on diesel and petrol, which are consumed by ordinary people also. And therefore, it is a wrong policy of the central governments. No state in India, for example, the last, since the COVID began, some of the states initially increased the rates, not Kerala, but no other state has increased taxes. So why should the states reduce the tax?
Sir, but what is the VAT that the state government of Kerala charges? Right now, the figure I have is close to 32%. Surely this can be reduced from your end?
Look, it's a very all our taxation powers have been surrendered to 70% of the taxation powers are surrendered to GST. They are subsumed under GST. Therefore, now tax on petrol and diesel is the next own tax revenue that is possible, the largest. Perhaps the tax on liquor may be second in Kerala. For majority of the state governments, this is the second most important tax. And nobody is in a position to give up this revenue because there is no option for them, you see. Only because GST revenues have come down so much, everybody is forced to cut their expenditure. And now suppose they give up this revenue that you are getting, well, then you have to cut your expenditure even further. Well, there is an argument. The state taxes are ad valorem taxes. And therefore, when the price of the petrol and diesel goes up, the state revenue also would increase. And that is true, though we may not be tweaking our rates. But, taxes once reduced cannot be raised. That's my logic. I don't think India can afford to keep the petrol and diesel prices this high. Central government will have to bring down its taxes today or tomorrow. And then I don't have the option of increasing my rate. I don't think it will be appreciated by anybody. Therefore, I will think twice before I tweak my rates downward.
Mr. Isaac, can you give us a sense of what is the kind of dependence for state revenues on income from fuel taxes? as percentage and in absolute terms? And has this been growing consistently for the state of Kerala? Because this is the pattern in several states. The story is actually one across the board, where state governments more and more are dependent on tax receipts from fuel.
Well, this is after GST revenue. This is the most important source of revenue for Kerala. So it would account for about 20% of the total loan revenue of the state government.
And is there no way that the state government in its own benevolence can ease the burden on the people of the state, the common man?
Very well. Therefore, all the more reason that the central government reduce the rate. See, at the time when they raised the rates, the argument given was that anyway it is not going to put additional burden on the people because they are only skimming off the gains that would have accrued to the people from reduction in the crude oil prices. The prices were stable. But then when the crude oil prices began to firm up and the margins of the oil companies were affected, they were allowed to raise the rates. See, by logic, they should have reduced the rate. They should adjust the rate at least with the changes in the crude oil prices so that you have a stable price of petrol and diesel in the country. So this is the most anti-people policy that a government can follow, what the central government is doing. They gave up elastic corporate tax revenue, huge amount, and then choose to opt to tax the people through petrol and diesel. And therefore, I would take a political route. I'll go to the people and say this is an insane policy by the central government. It is going to have serious effect upon one, the burden of the people. Second, the inflation. Now the inflation at this recession time, when the whole economy contracting, you have 7% inflation. Now that is, how does it happen? The major contributor is the fuel prices. Then comes the food prices. And therefore, you are entering into a stage of stagflation. You are not able to have your policy options to reduce the interest rate or expand your fiscal space because there is inflationary conditions. So therefore, if the public policy, counter-cyclical policy to be effective, they will have to bring down the inflation, for which they will have to bring down the tax on petrol and diesel.
Yes. Mr. Isaac, I just wanted to make a point because you talked about going to the people with this, and I'm seeing a quote by the Kerala BJP chief, Mr. K. Surendran, who says that people don't care about fuel prices. This is not a factor in polls, and this is a thought that has been echoed for some time. The opposition, whichever it may be, even in the past, has raised fuel prices, but as a political issue, it doesn't really resonate, which is why government after government feels very comfortable to go on increasing the prices. Is that actually a fact in your view, that it doesn't really pinch anyone electorally, which is why every government, state and center, is happy to go on increasing taxes?
No, there cannot be more callous response to the present fuel price inflation than what was stated by the BJP president in Kerala. That people don't care. Despite these increases, BJP has won the elections and so on. He even went to the state that people welcome it. Now, you have a big struggle going on in Delhi, the peasants and farmers. I think there is a limit beyond which if you push the people, they would react very angrily and wildly. That's a lesson that you have to draw from the struggle that's going on. Therefore, I think people must react. And that's what we political workers will have to do. We have to tell the people that why is this price inflation taking place? This is because government taxes on the petrol and diesel. The central government has increased it by 9 times for diesel, and the taxes have been raised by 3 times for petrol, and we must agitate to bring it down. So if we have not succeeded so far, I think we have got to succeed tomorrow.
Mr. Isaac, one of the solutions that's often talked about is bringing these taxes under the ambit of GST. What's being said is that this will rationalize taxes and also give permanent relief to the common man. It will also give steady income streams to center and state. Would you be in favor of this? Is this something you think is time that is discussed within the GST Council?
There is no constitutional barrier to bringing petrol and diesel under GST. But there are two issues. One, central government doesn't want it. That's a major source of income. And now I think just from the tax rate increase alone, additional revenue of 2.3 or 4 lakh crores of rupees, trillion rupees is being mobilized by the central government. And therefore, bringing in under GST would mean a severe loss of income for the central government also. This was not the situation earlier. The states would have lost more. But now central taxes are much higher than state taxes, and the revenue mobilization by the central government is more than that of the states. Second, the states will definitely insist on a compensation mechanism for a number of years before they would agree in the GST Council to have it included in the GST. Now, this is an issue that will be debated and so on. There's a simple solution. You have got a stagflation situation today in India, and there's nothing that prevents the central government from reducing the taxes. They raised it. Bring it down. Have it indexed with the price of the crude oil so that the petroleum companies' profit lines are not are preserved, and there's relatively stable price.
Sir, but I've asked you this again, but I will ask you one more time. It's the same conundrum before the central government, which is before you. Even you are in total taxing fuel at close to 38%. The governments need this income during COVID-19 when other revenues have fallen and no one's willing to let go. Isn't that the real story? That's
right. I don't think any state government in India today would agree to reduce the rate or now without a compensation permit that petrol and diesel be brought into GST. Because simply the hard budget constraints the state's face. They don't have a choice, you see. Now my revenue goes down, I have no option other than cutting my expenditure. Tell me, what is your option? Your borrowing is limited by FRBM. You have surrendered 70% of your taxation power to GST. And this is one of the things that is remaining. And if that is also gone, it's going to have serious implications for state revenue. Therefore, I don't think any state government in India would be willing to take that call today.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Isaac. So no state government in India wants to take the call of reducing taxes. The central government perhaps has the same argument to make, that at a time and in a year when other revenues have dipped, how can we give up this revenue which funds a lot of our social sector schemes as well? Meanwhile, it is the same common man, not just those who drive vehicles, who is constantly suffering. And with crude prices going up, there is little hope for respite. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you very much.